Following that report launch, we now have an interesting discussion on the transform your workforce to embrace the future of cloud. Now, how does an organization determine the learning gaps created by new technologies? Strategies for efficient reskilling and upskill at scale to provide ongoing value to their customers. Are technical skills enough to cross the digital divide? Get answers to all of these questions in the next session. Our speakers are Girish Dhanakshirur, Director of Software Engineering and CTO, IBM Cloud, IBM. Namrita Mahindro, Chief Digital Officer, Aditya Birla Group. Seema Unni, Head of Human Resources, Fidelity Investments, FMR India. And moderating the session is Divya Gupta, Partner and Solutions Lead, NASSCOM FutureSkills. Divya is an accomplished technocrat and a business leader with 27 plus years of experience, currently working with NASSCOM, leading the development of job competency standards for all the emerging technologies as a part of FutureSkills, the FS program. The FS program aims to reskill, upskill 4 million professionals and students in the new emerging technologies over the next 5 years in partnership with industry, government, and academia. Pleasure to have you all join us this evening. Over to you, Divya.
Thank you for the introduction, Justin. Today with me, I have 3 panelists. Girish, who's a software engineer, director, and CTO with worldwide responsibility for IBM Cloud development and IBM India's software labs. He comes with over 20 years of industry experience. As a director and CTO, he has the responsibility of IBM Cloud architecture, strategy, and development. He works closely with many worldwide clients on large-scale deployments, as well as partnering with CIOs to charter the digital and IT transformation journeys. Welcome, Girish.
Thank you.
Move on to Seema. Seema is the head of human resources function of Fidelity Investments India. She comes with over 25 years experience with varied leadership roles in the areas of HR, business partnership, mergers and acquisitions, leadership and organizational development. She has worked in the consulting and IT/ITS industry sectors. Prior to joining Fidelity, Seema was with Arthur Andersen and Ernst & Young. Welcome, Seema.
Thank you, Divya.
And then our final panelist, Namrita. She is a Chief Digital Officer of the Chemicals, Filaments, and Insulators sector at Aditya Birla Group. She comes with over 20 years of experience. She has held strategic executive with CXO level success in leading organizations transform their business leveraging digital and technology. She has also been an entrepreneur and worked with MNCs and Indian companies across sectors in US, UK, and India. Welcome, Namrita.
Thanks, Divya.
So before I go and shoot out the questions to our panelists, just a couple of just points I want to highlight to all the panelists that, as you know, that we have just unveiled our cloud report today in the summit. I just want to call out some of the key trends that have been called out in this report that are influencing the applicability of cloud skills. One, convergence of emerging technologies on cloud, right? If you look at AI, big data, IoT, edge computing, blockchain, they're all coming on cloud and they're leveraging its scalable and distributed architecture for faster application development. Second, the impact of serverless computing on cloud management by reducing workload and backend development operations through infrastructure as code at reduced costs, right? The third trend, with growing complexity of cloud architecture due to hybrid and multi-cloud environments, the cloud economy is rapidly gaining prominence as firms seek to better manage and optimize costs. So again, these are not the entire, you will see the report, it's a detailed report, but I just want to highlight the couple of points and the key trends that have come out from the report. So keeping what we are hearing, and the cloud has been here with us, and the cloud technology has been here for over 15 years now. So Seema, I would like to understand from you, how has cloud evolved in your organization, right? Just tell us a bit about your cloud journey then and now. And I'll start off with Seema and then Namrita. I would have the same question from you. It'll be good to understand from two of you as users of cloud, how has the journey evolved in the two different areas? So Seema, let's start off with you.
Yeah, thanks, Divya. And I think it's an extremely exciting topic, in the maturity model of the digital transformation as we stand today. From Fidelity's perspective, we are in the financial services sector, and we obviously technology is really driving our competitive edge from a fintech perspective. We started our digital transformation journey probably about 7 years ago, with more maturity in the last 5 years, is what I would say. And the way we started this out was with extreme amount of meticulous and disciplined planning that required, when we started this out, right from establishing the strong foundational capabilities to complex kind of network setups, integration, security architecture for a safe and reliable environment, and really thinking about how do you drive a cloud transformation in a financial services industry and company at scale. And that was really the then. And the two things we did was we had cloud technologists in our different business groups in Fidelity. And then we also set up what we call the enterprise cloud team or function, which was responsible for driving cloud standards, operating processes, and working with different business kind of groups, because ultimately you're doing this for the end customer. So really being able to integrate the requirements across the different business groups and embedding the change and the transformation that was required. So it was a multi-pronged approach, which had as an enterprise team at the center, and then the business unit cloud teams that really work together. That was, I would say, when we started out our digital transformation, when some of our cloud service provider engagement as well was very nascent. Today, as we stand, we are fairly matured from a cloud transformation perspective. And I would say there were 2 or 3 things that we've again really been able to embed. The first one is a platform approach. So when we've really looked at Fidelity's platform approach, we've said that to accelerate the cloud transformation so that we are able to innovate and have speed to market, we really needed to work with platforms, right? End-to-end kind of solutions. And we set up platforms in containers, APIs, data, security, reliability, observability, all of that was really required in a very systematic format. What that has helped us do is really drive the cloud transformation at scale. The second thing I think is that there is a lot of collaboration and sharing of best practices across the different groups, so that migration paths are simplified, right, for different applications and kind of the native applications that needed to be sunset and transferred, migrated onto the cloud. So the platform approach has really been one of our kind of key competitive edges, I would say. The second thing we've done is we've been able to embed communities of practice and centers of excellence, which really share best practices across different customer segments, and are able to look at, agility, automation, and, like you talked about, Divya, in the beginning, just embedding this transformation at a cost-effective and efficient manner. And then finally, we've embraced an open source culture where our technologists are really able to recreate, create reusable solutions that contribute to the cloud ecosystem. And we've got, different platforms where they're able to solve business problems in a gamified and a risk-free environment. So we've done a lot with learning, with upskilling, and really looking at what do we need when we hire and retain our cloud technologists. So those are just some key tenets, and happy to delve a little more into it as we progress in this conversation. But right now, in terms of the maturity of the model, I think what has primarily helped us is having an employee-centric approach, which is very, very much required for this mindset shift in the digital transformation journey.
Great, thank you so much, Seema. Thank you. I'll just throw it. I remember when I was doing my MBA, and this is more than almost 15 years back. And I was taking one of the classes in IT, and they said, okay, write, and they all knew I was Intel, and they said, why don't you write a paper on cloud? And I remember 15 years back, coming from an engineering world also, I struggled. I struggled to even write something on cloud. It was more like, just find me the data, I want to put it together. But now I look back, and it was, coming from the technology background, leading in cloud also. But there was hardly anything there. And look, we have where we are, just 15 years down the road. And listening to your journey, what you just said, Seema, just what it was initially, just the journey began 7 years back for you guys, and how it has evolved in 7 years. And one of my favorite points when I always win organization, the sharing of best practices and being open about it. I think it's so crucial, because we all, instead of reinventing the wheel, what's out there, leveraging from that is such a useful thing. So it's good to hear that open source collaboration, your platform approach. So Namrita, you heard the 3 areas how they are focusing on in the financial world. Let's hear from you. What are you doing in your organization? How has cloud evolved for you guys?
Sure, thanks, Divya. So, in the chemical filaments and insulator sector that I'm part of, we have 9 businesses, and they all are at different stages of their digital maturity. So we started our cloud journey a few years back. It was fragmented. It started with migrating to Office 365. And then there were some applications in terms of websites, logistics applications, etc., that we moved to the cloud. Some, in the corporate offices, some across our 20 plants that we have. We also had some hyperconvergence infra that we had put in place in some of our plants, and that made the lift and shift to cloud a little easier with the virtual storage and the compute part migration. Having said that, I think the other area that we looked at from a cloud perspective in terms of a pocket of excellence was disaster recovery, and move that completely to a private cloud, and that we did something at the Aditya Birla Group level, being part of that, as opposed to just doing it for our business. Now, that was the then, wherein and this is just a sample of some of the stuff that we were doing over the last couple of years. I'd say over the last 18 to 24 months, we've taken a far more structured approach to start moving to a cloud-first strategy. And it really started with, the objectives of why do we want to do it and what does it mean for us. I think over the last 18 months, information security has become a key area for us. And there is, there are things that are happening in that space, and that's become a key priority for us. From a perspective of, individual businesses looking at moving lock, stock, and barrel from the infrastructure to, the data and the applications, all of them moving to the cloud, we've managed to successfully do it end-to-end for one business with a platform approach. I think that has been a key success, and that was something that we finished towards, the first quarter of this year. And that's given a lot of confidence to the other businesses in the sector, and those conversations have, started at their different levels of maturity in terms of, the migration to the cloud. Now, given that, I think there were a couple of questions that we had, when we were looking at doing this migration. One was in terms of saying, do we need to run parallel systems as we're doing this migration? Do we do a lift and shift only, or do we actually look at a complete transformation approach? And that meant the process re-engineering, looking at, again, this business that we did it for was working across 5 different geographies. So you have compliance issues which come into place. You have certain regulations which need to be taken care of. We had to look at the risks and the costs that were involved in doing this migration. So I think some of those questions that we looked to answer, while they were from a business first perspective, but it was also keeping the larger vision of saying, how do we then look at scaling this across the other businesses as they embark on this journey? I think that process took us a while. We prioritized, and once we had the business case in place, I think from there the journey was fairly, rapid in terms of looking at, making that migration happen and doing it successfully. I think the 2 things that came out for us were that as we set on this journey, one was that we didn't necessarily have sufficient talent in-house. And so the need to look at, partnering with SI partners or looking at partners who could look at cloud for us end to end was something which became very apparent as a short-term strategy for us as we build those capabilities in the long term. So I think that is running as a twin engine where we have those partners, but we are also focusing on building capabilities internally. And these run across, from saying cloud administrators to architects to, the whole security layer. And again, there is a lot of, I guess, collaboration which is happening at the group level. Leveraging, the capabilities that they already have from a COE perspective, from, building the competencies perspective and the skills in this area. So the intent is that over a period of the next 12 to 18 months, we would have a situation where we would be far more independent in terms of our own skill sets also. I think the second aspect for us was in terms of looking at it from a perspective of saying we need to look at a hybrid cloud situation, because we were not going to mandate to any of the 9 businesses, that they should move to one platform versus the other, because there are multiple factors to be taken into account, whether it is, from a compatibility perspective, whether it is from a perspective of, what is the architecture, what is the vision, what are the kind of integrations which are involved, etc. So given that, I think, again, over there, we are leaning in a lot on the group in terms of saying that they have a multi-cloud management system, and can we leverage that from a perspective of, even if different businesses within the sector want to, work with different partners, that is perfectly fine. So I think those were the 2 factors over there. The last thing I want to touch upon is the fact that because we are in the manufacturing sector, so, the whole OT area is a huge one in terms of the operational, migration to the cloud. And as you may be aware, a lot of the OT environments are very aged, and they've been there forever without any modern, ready digital technology compatibility. So I think that's the other factor, that we've had to take into account in terms of specifically from a security perspective. And that is, and the other aspect is, of course, that the remote workers, though in plants you don't have necessarily remote workers, but a lot of the ecosystem, the surrounding ecosystem today is remote. So I think those are some other factors that we are taking into play, taking into consideration in terms of our cloud play, and looking at, what do we need to do in terms of managing that risk, in terms of, making sure that we have a platform approach, which then allows not just us to lift ourselves to the cloud, but also the partner ecosystem then, moving hand in hand with us on that front. I think with that, I'll take a pause, but these are some of the areas that we are focusing on from a cloud migration perspective.
Thank you, Namrita. I think you also, even though, Seema talked about, how the journey began 7 years back and how it's taking a lot more traction. I'm kind of hearing the same thing, that it initially in your organization also started as a fragmented approach, and now it's coming as a more structured approach. And you guys have actually successfully deployed end-to-end solution for one of the 9 businesses, right? And again, I think the learning, what you're calling out is, again, you touched upon the lack of talent and upskilling, which is, we will cover that very soon and get more details from you on that. I think what's important is also collaboration at your group level. It's not like one business group looking at a siloed approach. It's more of a group level effort on the cloud, how you implement that. And again, the platform approach, which is exactly what Seema touched upon also. And then the hybrid model, right? The multi-cloud management approach, because one solution may not work for all the different 9 businesses, right? So great. Thank you, Namrita. So Girish, we heard from Seema and Namrita more in terms of they are the users of the cloud, right? When IBM is one of actually cloud providers, right? So what are the changes that you have seen over the last decade, and particularly with the onset of pandemic? How has cloud adoption roadmap evolved, for enterprises globally and in India? Because you are on the other side providing the cloud solutions to your clients like Fidelity and other developer groups. So let's hear from you, Girish.
Yeah. Thank you, Divya, and thanks to NASSCOM also, for inviting me to this panel. So it's great to hear perspective both from Namrita and Seema, because I mean those are essentially the similar conversations when we have in the CXO office room, closed door conversations on how to chart the journey and whatnot. So as a cloud CTO, from the public cloud CTO for the last 5 to 6 years, I've had the pleasure of traveling tens of countries, of course, prior to pandemic, meeting several Fortune 500 CXOs across the globe, right? So the stories, of course, there's ours in India, and then we got the same thing in Middle East, in Asia Pac, or in North America, or in South America. The conversations are very similar because this whole cloud using cloud becoming the platform for enterprise to run applications is same wherever we go, because it's a similar results that it offers. Everywhere, I would say about 4 to 5 years ago, the key driver there in those conversations, it used to be faster time to market, right? So we got to get applications as soon as possible to the market because the traditional one was very slow. And cloud offered exactly that. So our conversations typically used to revolve around greenfield applications, right? So because we would say, don't touch your existing ones. Let's look at the greenfield applications, which is brand new application that you plan to build. Let's use that and let's test the waters. Putting it on cloud and exploiting the agility and faster time to market. I would say, I think about a few years later, which is about maybe 3-4 years ago, because we were investing heavily, so we started running our own studies, talking to large enterprise CEOs. We also realized that I think we had scratched just the surface of infrastructure and applications moving to cloud. I think the numbers were mind-boggling. It was just like 20% is what was ready or what had shifted to public cloud, and the remaining 80% was still sitting behind the enterprise firewalls, right? So 80% of the enterprise workloads were still running in on-prem solutions. We also, when we looked at that 80% of the workload mix, we realized that clients had invested heavily in software and hardware over decades, and they wouldn't want to just write off everything and move everything, all their applications to public cloud. So what we realized was, in order for the CXO's modernization journey or the transformation journey, you have to have a hybrid cloud approach. I think Namrita touched upon this a little bit. You got to start hybrid cloud architecture from day one, which is something that we've been screaming on top of our voice for the last 4 to 5 years. Only lately others have started adopting. And of course, it's got to be multi-cloud from day one, because it's not going to be just one cloud per customer. It's going to be multi-cloud from day one. So hybrid cloud architecture, has it's got several fundamental principles, right? So including containerizing the workloads, prior to moving. Kubernetes will play a left, right, and center role. So we've got our OpenShift platform that we have invested heavily, to help as part of this journey. Because hybrid cloud, although it offers all the benefits of the cloud architecture, I would say I think the one key benefit that clients get is the flexibility, right? So there are no long-term lock-ins, going with a single cloud. So, but let me bring it back to this discussion. What's slowing the progress? Divya, in my mind, it's the availability of the new age talent pool. I know both, both of them touched upon this as a key factor. In my mind, I'm very clear that it's the lack of new age talent pool, that's holding on this transformation, from accelerating. Now, your question about, I think, there was a little bit about pandemic as well, right? So, which is an interesting aspect last 2 years. So there's a joke going around which says, I'm pretty sure, others might have heard, right? Who influenced cloud adoption the most in the last 2 years, right? Or last 18 months? Is this the CEO or the CIO, or is it COVID, right? I think the answer is very clear, right? COVID, with all the restrictions put in place on the employees, business partners, in the ecosystem providers, everyone being remote, clients are pushing aggressively, modernizing their stacks and moving it to clouds. I also happen to work very closely with Government of India, some of their missions. So they are empaneling cloud providers like ourselves, to offer the benefits of cloud, while at the same time ensuring, some of the data sovereignty issues are kept in mind as well, right? So because there's a long checklist that we have to go through. And I think, if we have time, we probably will talk about it, but this is where vertical clouds are emerging, and we are investing heavily in vertical clouds, because vertical clouds bring in things like controls, for vertical. For example, if it is government, then it is things like FedRAMP. If it is financial services, it's a financial services controls, SOC 2, HIPAA for healthcare, GDPR for European Union. So these are all various controls that you have to put in place, for every service that you run on every data center, across the globe. So that, kind of in a nutshell, what I have seen in the last, I would say 4 to 5 years, because prior to that, cloud has been there for the last 10 years. Earlier, it used to be lift and shift and, a few data center DR as a strategy and stuff like that. But I think both of them spoke in last 3-4 years. It's becoming a platform conversation. So which means, I think, we are right at the peak of cloud adoption that's happening right now.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So journey from lift and shift to faster TTM conversations to just the greenfield applications to actually moving into more, clients actually focusing more on hybrid model, multi-cloud model from the beginning approach, to now COVID actually accelerating the need for cloud, to actually talking vertical clouds. Wow. We have definitely progressed. And I think all three of you touched upon, and especially Namrita, you and Girish also touched upon the fact that talent is one main factor, right? Even though there is a growing need of cloud transformation, but talent is actually one of the concerns. So moving in that direction, Girish, I'll just continue with you. What are the most important cloud skills that every cloud team must have? Are you seeing any new emerging areas? I know you mentioned vertical and everything, but from your perspective, what are the important skills?
Yeah, thanks, Divya, for the question. That's an excellent question. I think we all alluded to that a little bit at the beginning. In my mind, I think I say this again: cloud adoption in any organization will be proportional to the pace at which organizations will grow cloud skills. It's as simple as that, because infrastructure is there, services are there, technology is there, architecture is there, and need is there, right? So what we are missing is skills. So we at IBM, from a cloud provider perspective, I sort of split this into 2 separate roles. Of course, there are more roles, but then 2 are very critical, right? So there's one which is the cloud service development. These are mostly cloud native skills. For example, front-end developers with skills like React.js, Angulars, and stuff like that. The key here is that they got to have very good distributed computing experience, which they have to get it from their colleges. I also am a visiting faculty at IIT, and I teach final year cloud computing course, and that's essentially what I'm trying to bridge the gap, right? Which is what we don't teach. So we got to get these skills. In addition, we also expect them to be familiar with skills like 12-factor apps, agile development methodologies, designing for resiliencies, knowing about the concept of A/B testing, canary releases, etc. Right? So finally, as compute, you talked about it at the beginning, as compute evolves, from raw virtual machines all the way to containers to serverless, we expect our engineers, to have a very good grasp of those architecture styles. And the second one is, which is I think today, which is the most sought after, is SRE, which is site reliability engineering, and DevOps skills. So although there's a slight difference between these 2, but generally, we end up clubbing them into one cohort. In here, specifically what we are looking for in site reliability engineering, SRE skills, is they should have very good grasp of things like service level agreements, SLOs, error budgets, toils, exposure to automation, testing strategies, tool chains, for pipelines. An engineer should be familiar with at least one automation framework, be it Terraform, Ansible, Chef, and then they got to have like very good internal skills. So for DevOps, I would say, I think we are shifting more. I think Namrita touched upon this a little bit. We are moving towards DevSecOps because we got to have security baked in the DevOps journey from day zero. Security cannot be an afterthought. So from where I sit, I can tell you skills around SRE automation with Terraform or Ansible or Chef, with a little bit of serverless. So those are the skills that we expect. There's a last one, which I think is a very evolving field. We've started investing in quite a bit, which is AI ops, because that's when you start bringing in AI, into your infrastructure development, infrastructure maintenance. Of course, I'm not talking about the application side of AI, which is machine learning models and whatnot, but I'm talking about AI ops, and perhaps we can table this as a topic for the next roundtable.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Girish. I won't touch upon all the technical things you called about, but what's interesting to me that came out from your conversation was the fact that you, as coming from industries, actually working with academia on bridging that gap that we often hear, that what academic institutes are teaching, is it really relevant for industry, for the students graduating to be employable and be ready job from day one. So it's great to hear that the people from industry are actually proactively working and trying to minimize that gap. So that's great, Girish. I think that's a conversation we'll definitely develop on more. But Namrita, let me come to you. So you heard Girish talk about the different skills required. What are some of the core skills you guys are developing with your team, within your teams? Because you also mentioned that lack of talent is definitely one of the concerns for your organization.
Yeah, I think Divya, Girish covered most of the skills in a lot of detail. And having said that, I think at this point in time, the focus has been more around the governance skills, just to make sure that, we can actually do the governance, whether it is around the administration, whether it is around, the security, whether it is around, looking at the whole developer space, etc. But I see the shifting. And so we've very actively been running programs, again, at a group level, whereby, we are participating and increasing a lot of the reskilling, which is happening both at the business level as well as the plant talent that we have. So taking them to start building those skills through certifications, through formal programs, etc., to start then building those competencies, whether it is from a security or an architecture point of view. And I think the AI ops is an interesting one, because that was a conversation I was having only last week with, in one of the teams that we were talking about. But that's another area that we've identified and we're sort of putting down as something that we would want to potentially look at next year. In terms of, the skills, the way I look at it is we will still have a huge reliance on our SI partners, and our managed service providers, so that hybrid model over there will continue to exist, unlike, Girish coming in from the industry. So I think it is an area that we're looking at evolving. We would definitely want, I would say we're not going to look at this at scale. We're going to look at a handful of people who we have in the sector who would maybe, be standalone COEs in themselves, and then align very closely with the group level COE that we have around the cloud. So that is the way we're looking at, building up the skill set as we move forward. But from a perspective of, the business itself, I think it will still continue to be a lot of, a very lean team, so to speak, and a combination of, working with these managed service providers and the group COE that we have. So that's where we are currently in terms of our upskilling and reskilling, and infusing in, of course, some new talent that comes into play as we move forward.
Thanks, Namrita. So you're also talking about, that the SI partner dependency will always be there while you develop some of your own teams and everything. So it's always going to be a combination for external and internal sources. So Siva, similar question, but slightly different. So based on your experience, what are the top 3 challenges that you see in your organization developing the relevant cloud skills? I mean, while we all talk about we'll do this, these skills are important, but what are the challenges we face?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, Divya. And both Girish and Namrita so eloquently talked about all the skills, right, that are required for the cloud transformation. I will say a couple of things. I think the biggest challenge, for our organization as well as I think the industry in cloud adoption, to your point, Girish, is the mindset shift. Because what happens is that you have all of the astrological signs well in place. What is probably required as a big impetus is how do you drive the mindset shift in a cloud transformation journey, where you're so used to a certain way of developing applications to really moving it and identifying cloud service providers to meet various needs that you have. So I would say that we've adopted a very specific approach in our organization to manage this, which is called the core and common upskilling approach. And what I mean by that is the core learning approach is essentially folks that are deployed in cloud in the center of excellence or in the core applications that need to get migrated. They go through some very deep upskilling in terms of the build approach. And so we always go with a buy and build approach and say, what is the proportion that needs to be flexible over the phase of cloud adoption? And that's what we've done in the last 5 years. So maybe 5 years back we had more of a buy approach. Today we have more of a build approach, right? And therefore I think what we've done really is the core upskilling is very specific, very tailor-made, because it also needs both technical and domain, the industry knowledge, to be kind of juxtaposed side by side so that you're able to move, in a pretty accelerated way. So that's kind of the core skills, which I think Girish, you touched upon early on. And then what we have is something which we've called cloud as a mindset, cloud as a discipline. And that's the common solution where we've said, I remember 3 years back, we launched this huge program where we said, we'll have a cloud event. Anyone that wants to get certified, on cloud, wants to upskill on cloud, absolutely available in terms of learning paths. So we invested a huge amount of our learning dollars in what we call cloud as a mindset or cloud as a discipline. And we found that the uptake was just phenomenal. And so the core and common, as we talk about it, continues, right? And that journey of upskilling has helped us with this challenge of how do you bring about cultural shift when you want to take about, undertake this IT transformation. And that's why I said it's an IT-centric approach along with a very, very strong employee-centric approach. The second, I think, big challenge that we are facing, obviously, is in talent retention, which is not news for the technology industry in India. We see that in the news every single day about the competitiveness in the market. So from a holistic talent acquisition strategy, as well as the retention strategy, what we've done is just as a, we've done things like cloud game days, right? It's a gamified approach where our technologists can actually challenge the status quo. They can work on, the greenfield applications, but also on some of our kind of native applications that need to be sunset. But you need to provide an environment where employees feel very safe to speak the truth and be able to say, okay, these are the things I need to work on, and these are the things I need to mend or I need to think about in terms of new operating new operating practices or procedures. So we've called it the cloud game day, where, associates can just solve real life business problems, with cloud solutions. And that's just opened up the environment of open source, of open collaboration, speaking up, right? And I would say for young millennial technologists today, I think just being able to empower them in the journey and have much more of a bottoms up groundswell in cloud adoption meets that challenge of talent retention. Because otherwise you might, end up upskilling, but then lose the talent if you don't provide them the opportunity to actually apply their skills. So I think it's kind of a combination of these two approaches to mitigate the challenges of both, as I said, the cultural transformation as well as the whole kind of talent retention play, which is enormous today, as we all stand in the Indian IT industry.
Great. Thank you, Seema. I'm sure multiple organizations are facing the similar challenges. And the skill set, Girish, you touched upon, and Namrita, that you touched upon, that AI ops, that's a new one coming. The cloud service development, SRE, DevOps, Agile. These are, I mean, and I think they're not just relevant just for cloud. I think across new age technologies, we are hearing the similar things. So thank you once again for sharing your valuable insights. And I hope our listeners actually get some insights from this and it's a valuable session for them. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Divya, Namrita, Girish, and Seema for that interesting and apt last session for day one of the summit.